I think we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight or this evening or this afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Kristen Buckles, and I'm the editor-in-chief at the University of Arizona Press. And welcome to our book launch event for American Indian Studies. Please remember to open the chat to comment, and we're going to have time at the end for questions and answers. And I would like to just start by reading our land acknowledgement at the University of Arizona. We respectfully acknowledge the University of Arizona is on the land and territories of Indigenous people. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being home to the O'odham and the Yaqui. Excuse me, one second. Committed to diversity and inclusion, the university strives to build sustainable relationships with sovereign Native nations and Indigenous communities through educational offerings, partnerships, and community service. Now I'd like to just say a bit about the University of Arizona Press, the proud publisher of this book. The University of Arizona Press is the premier publisher of academic, regional, and literary works in the state of Arizona. We disseminate ideas and knowledge of lasting value that enrich understanding, inspire curiosity, and enlighten readers. We advance the University of Arizona's mission by connecting scholarship and creative expression to readers worldwide. Founded in 1959, the Press is a nonprofit publisher of scholarly and regional books. We publish about 50 books a year and have more than 1,600 titles in print. These include scholarly titles in Native American and Indigenous studies, Latinx studies, border studies, history, anthropology, archaeology, and the space sciences. As well as we published 2 award-winning literary series, one called Soundtracks for Native American and Indigenous writing, and one called Camino del Sol for Latinx writing. And the University of Arizona Press is, again, the very proud publisher of this book, American Indian Studies, which is a collection of personal narratives from Native graduates of the University of Arizona's American Indian Studies doctoral program, which is the first program of its kind. And there are stories of endurance and resiliency in here, hardship and struggle, and accomplishment and success. And we are going to hear about these stories tonight. This book provides insight into the diverse and dynamic experiences of Native graduate students. Essayists share the benefits of having an American Indian Studies program at a mainstream academic institution, not just for the students enrolled, but also for their communities. It is a real honor for me to now introduce the head of U Arizona's American Indian Studies Department, Dr. Matthew Sakiestewa Gilbert, who will introduce the program and the book's editors. Dr. Gilbert is professor and head of the Department of American Indian Studies at the University of Arizona. He is an enrolled member of the Hopi tribe from the village of Upper Munkapi. Centering his research and teaching on Native American history and the history of the American West, he examines the history of American Indian education, the Indian boarding school experience, and American Indians and sport. In addition to publishing articles and books on Hopi history, he has produced a documentary film, Beyond the Mesas, on the Hopi experience at off-reservation Indian boarding schools, including Sherman Institute, Stewart Indian School, and the Phoenix Indian School. It's an honor to welcome you. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Gilbert.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that very kind introduction. And I want to just welcome everybody who's here. I'm honored to be here and part of this group and to have been asked to give the introduction. I'm currently in my church's library right now because I've been down here at the church this morning. And just as I sat down, the church choir next door started practicing. So I will try to speak over the church choir as they're getting ready for Easter Sunday. But nevertheless, I'm here and thrilled to be part of this gathering. So I have the privilege, and it really is a privilege of providing a brief introduction today's event celebrating, and I really use that word knowingly, this idea of a celebration. Our colleagues, Dr. Jo Tippeconnic Fox, who's an associate professor of American Indian Studies at UA, my colleague, Dr. Mark Blair, who's also professor of practice and associate director of the Masters of Legal Studies program at UA, and also occasionally teaches in the Department of American Indian Studies. And then Dr. Kestrel Smith, who's currently professor and chair of the American Indian and Indigenous Studies program at Wenatchee Valley College in Oak, Washington, who also, along with Dr. Blair, also a graduate student from the UA and American Indian Studies. All of whom recently published, as you know, which is the reason why we're here and gathered tonight, an edited collection with the University of Arizona Press entitled American Indian Studies, Native PhD graduates gift their stories. I do want to say, just in my opening remarks, just the incredible work that Kristen and others are doing at the University of Arizona Press in being a leader of publishing and chasing after projects centering on American Indian and Indigenous studies. The number, the volume, and also the quality of the books and other projects that are coming out of our very own press is quite remarkable. And I think it speaks volume of the editors, the director of the press, and it speaks volumes of the press's dedication and commitment to Indigenous studies, and specifically within this particular book, the publishing of American Indian scholars, which I think is so important. We see a number of presses, of course, throughout the field of American Indian Studies, Native Studies, who are beginning to just now publish American Indian works on American Indigenous Studies. But U of A Press has been around for a long time and has been a leader from the very start. So in this book, in American Indian Studies, Doctors Fox, Blair, and Smith share the educational stories of former Native American PhD students, graduate students of the university's American Indian Studies department. You can imagine just how excited that I am and my colleagues are, and also the graduate students in the program at the publication of this particular book. Their book, which I believe is the first, or it's one of the only. I'm sitting here thinking, and I can't think of another example in the field or in the academy. One of the first of its kind in the academy, provides readers with insights into the diverse and dynamic experiences of Indigenous students while demonstrating the importance of having a Native Studies program within institutions of higher education. I can't emphasize how important this publication is as an argument, as a case that Native people can and will make in the future as to the importance of American Indian and Indigenous Studies programs in the academy at a time when smaller units and AIS programs tend to be smaller units are being threatened by campus administration and or state legislators to threaten to take money from programs, to shrink these programs. There's an argument that has to be made as to the importance of it. And this book, American Indian Studies, is going to be a wonderful, wonderful tool for all of us to use. As the authors of the essays so aptly demonstrate, Native American students face unique cultural, social, and familial challenges when enrolled in a doctoral program. And this volume examines these issues with care, sophistication, and scholarly depth. I graduated from a PhD program, UC Riverside, nearly 20 years ago. And at that time, I had nothing like this book to go to. to seek help about how, as a Native person, to navigate the academy. There are few individuals in general, Native people in general, that I could go to have these kinds of conversations. And I think I would have just loved a resource like this to hear these stories and to learn from these individuals. However, this book is more than a series of stories and accounts that tell of one's experience in the academy. It also serves as a resource for future and current Native American students who are contemplating graduate school, especially in the field of American Indian Studies. In the coming weeks and months, as these cycles tend to happen when new books are released, this collection will surely receive high praise from scholars and students alike. And it showcases as it showcases the department and university, brings positive attention to Native studies on campus, and perhaps most importantly, yes, most importantly, highlights the work and accomplishments of our American Indian students. And so without further delay, please join me in this virtual space of Zoom in welcoming and congratulating our editors, and then also our contributors who you're going to be hearing to here soon. But our editors, Jo Tippeconnic Fox, Blair, and Kestrel Smith, as they now offer comments on their book.
Thank you for those wonderful words, Dr. Gilbert. Much appreciated. I'd like to welcome everyone here, but before we get started, I'd like to ask Greg Redhouse if he would, bless us with a short prayer in custom that we normally do with AIS.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Naslash ma yerlishet kati in the Essayists Yaska sanatle na yenes gan tobachin seskin sesha seskil set et atne shadatne atne na kostne childne justne niodne hanatsko yenne shisha tunishle the way nishle no katne nishle Blashla nishle na bahidne nishle Anil togo nichet kayawat etole nichet zi hollandole aro nichet zad bega delki yat etole aro nichet sakes yat etole what anitzen in ashonde nichet kadir wal Hujan hasle short and sweet.
Thank you, Greg. And once again, welcome everyone, and thank you for coming here. We're very excited, and we're very excited for the book, and very excited to have the contributors joining with us today to share their stories. And we are incredibly proud of our contributors too. To start off with, I'm going to say a few words, and then we'll pass it on to our other editors and contributors. So my name is Blair. I'm Anishinaabe from Michigan originally. A little bit of history. I went to Dartmouth College for my undergrad before coming to the AIS program for my PhD. With a small trip to law school in there, I had to mention that because all my coworkers are here and they're going to grill me about it tomorrow probably. I'm currently the Associate Director of the Master of Legal Studies program and the BA in Law program at the University of Arizona, James E. Rogers College of Law. I'm also a professor of practice with the college. And I have taught some AIS courses recently. Before coming to the law college, I worked at AIS at U of A for 5 years, as well as being a student in the program. So I mentioned Dartmouth College because one of my influences at Dartmouth, and I see some of my classmates are on here too from Dartmouth, welcome, was the First Peoples book. I was going to school there with many of the students who are profiled in that book, and it was kind of the first person account for Native students going to school and some of the challenges and triumphs they dealt with while getting through that program. So that always stuck with me. And if it wasn't for the Native American program at Dartmouth, I probably wouldn't have graduated from there as an undergraduate. So bringing that with me to the AIS program, at U of A, I found that same support and resources in the American Indian Studies program. This book was 7 years in the making. As I mentioned, I graduated my PhD from AIS in 2015. I was the 43rd graduate. We were actually keeping track for a while. And I was part of the largest graduating class. We had 7 PhD graduates that year. And my last words to them at graduation was, let's make a difference. Let's go out there and change the world. And this is our attempt to do that in a lot of ways. And one of the reasons we did this is because there just is not a lot of resources out there for graduate Native American students. Native American education in general is lacking in some resources, but on the graduate level, it was extremely lacking, especially when we were going to school. There's been some more lately. Dr. Fox, who was my mentor, actually had some of the few works out that talked about graduate studies for Native studies students. But that's basically what I looked at in my dissertation, was Native student success at the PhD level. And some of the driving force behind that was just the numbers that U of A was putting out. I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but University of Arizona is the #1 degree granting institution for PhDs to Native American students. And that caught my attention when I was working on my dissertation. For one reason, American Indian Studies didn't get a lot of credit for it at the time.
Yeah.
Education had a lot of graduates, and the Sloan program, it's a great program, by the way, dealing with STEM students, got a lot of credit for the program. But over 40% of Native PhD graduates graduating from University of Arizona were from the American Indian Studies department. And so that was lost in the messaging a little bit. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, to get the stories out there and let people know about that. During our research and during our collaboration with this book, we found that some of the reasons affecting success for graduate students, PhD students in particular, is one, there's just a lack of resources out there, as we mentioned, and other factors for success were lacking in some places. We found that strong mentorship, especially from our AIS faculty, was a driving force. We found access to money through teaching assistantships and scholarships from AIS was a contributing factor. And we found one of the biggest contributing factors was just the will to succeed and the strong self-identity that students have, PhD students. And this goes for Native education in general, these factors. They seem to cover broadly, but when you're at the graduate level PhD students, it's amplified because most of our graduate students have families that they're supporting, they have little kids. And while I mentioned that, we're very family friendly. So we all have little kids and running around the background. So if they're there, you bring them up to the camera, we're fine with that. And we all understand completely. I had my daughter when I started the program, and I've got 2 children, and they're both very invested in American Indian Studies as well. What else? We found some themes from the stories, and we knew there would be some themes that came out, but our contributors confirmed those themes for us, and they are in the book. And as our contributors are divided up, family and kinship, which includes relationships to land and our ancestors, mentorship, and service and giving back to their communities. When you read our stories from the contributors, you'll see these themes carry out throughout the entire book. And I'm going to keep it short because I want the focus to be on the contributors, because it's their stories, it's their gifts for us, and their opportunity to share their stories outside the book with you. And we'll have some Q&A at the end too. We'll stick around for that as well. So, but at this point, I want to pass it over to Mary Jo Tippeconnic Fox. She was my mentor at AIS when I was there, one of many mentors. We were a family, everybody was mentoring, but she was my dissertation chair and helped me get this project off the ground. I wouldn't have been able to do without her help in the beginning. And then Kestrel coming on later was what we needed to get it finished. And we're very proud of what we put together. So I'm passing it on to Dr. Fox right now.
Again, I'm Mary Jo Tippeconnic Fox, and I'm a part of the faculty of American Indian Studies at the U of Arizona. And, and I'm fortunate to be one of the editors of this volume. Also to be editors with two of my former PhD students, which makes it really extra special. But then when I looked at the contributors of this book too, I've been a part of, they were in the program when I was in the program. I've been in the program a long time. So I've had personal contact with just every single one of them. And then, so it's real personal to me. And it's a real source of pride to me to have these, former students tell their story. And most of all, they graduated, they completed it. Sometimes it wasn't always easy, but they made it, and they're contributing all over the place. I see them in different institutions. I see them at conferences presenting their work. I've seen them, come up with books and articles, and this is just so gratifying to me, to think that I was a little part of maybe their education in the doctoral program. So it is a real personal thing to me, something I really wanted to highlight, because I think that, we don't always see our native scholars, getting the credit that they need, the recognition that we need. And then it's also recognition for the AIS program at the University of Arizona. I was the president when this was an idea, and actually implemented the PhD program. We went through all the different channels. I was there from the very start. And then to see the outcome, to see that some of those first students we brought in 97, and then now to see, the 50 or more graduates that we have that are out there contributing in different ways and making a difference, in Indian education. One of my areas is American Indian higher education. And from teaching, in that area, there's a scarcity of literature out there in scholarship on Native students in the PhD program. We see, more about Native students in higher education in general, which is good because we do need that too. But we need to be looking at the doctoral program too, seeing, we have this new generation that's coming out, and we have this generation that has a degree in American Indian Studies. They don't have to go and get degrees like I did in other areas. Just like Dr. Gilbert said, it wasn't available when we were in school. So these are people that are really, really making a difference. They're beginning, they're the first of their kind to achieve the highest academic degree you can get in the academy. And that's really something to see, When I was in the doctoral program, there's very few Native students at the University of Arizona. My degree is from the University of Arizona. But now, you see more and more, and that's so gratifying. But we just really wanted, to showcase these, this new generation of scholars that American Indian Studies at the University of Arizona is turning out. We're doing, they're making us really look good, with their work. And so, we just, and we, like Dr. Blair said, we don't always get that credit. We haven't always gotten that credit. So, with this volume, we wanted to showcase them, and hopefully they'll get some recognition, and, to see them succeed. And I have a lot of times these students come in and speak to my classes, and to see their success is so gratifying. That's the rewards that I think that we have as professors and teachers and mentors of future generations of Native students. So, I just want to really tell our contributors that we just really appreciate you, gifting these stories, because we would like for people, to read them and to really maybe motivate others that are thinking about going into doctoral programs in AIS and other fields, you know. So we want that to be a motivational place because we need to have more Native scholars out there. And I hope that this publication will help the future generation. Thank you. I think now the next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Sheila Nicholas. We asked, Sheila is an alumnus of our program. I think she was in the very first cohort of our program, the first students that we brought in. And she is now a professor in the College of Education at the University of Arizona, and has really turned out some, wonderful scholarship on language revitalization. I wanted Sheila to be a contributor and actually write, and I asked her several times, but as we all know, we get real busy and etc. So then I offered, I asked her to write the foreword because, her voice as being one of the first in our program is real important. So I wanted her to be involved in that. So Dr. Nicholas, I'll turn it over to you. Oh, excuse me. I think I made a mistake here. Before Dr. Nicholas, Dr. Smith, let's have Dr. Smith. You want to say a few words as the other editor?
I think we were going to go with Dr. Nicholas. And
okay, all right. Okay.
You were right. You were right the first time.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll get back to Dr. Smith because we want her to have some words too here. All right, Dr. Nicholas, please.
Asquali, dito kay naka mas ni highlight to in a book view ni anabe it's been anabe yeah ito kay mong basta kay pa umi ascolta ni ne view tsuya ni kamata view ni ngem na obi songyan na itif kumaya amumi view highlight. Thank you, Mary Jo, for your words of introduction. And I want to say what I said was, you have been one of the primary reasons I'm where I am today. You are also my mentor. I spent a lot of time with you and really benefited from that relationship. And so you're right, I was invited to contribute a chapter and didn't get it done, but I'm thankful that you were persistent in inviting me. So now I am more than humbled and privileged to essentially, congratulate my siblings, my younger siblings in essence, because most of the scholars that are contributing to this book came after me. I am one of the first four that started in this brand new program in 1997, but I'd already received my master's degree in American Indian Studies as well. So I feel like definitely this is home and that I'm back with family. And in the foreword, I did really notice that all of this is about relationships and relationality, to the hilt. And so I expressed this space as a place that was exemplary of an Indigenous community within the Academy. I know that I would not be here if I hadn't had the opportunity to first get my master's in American Indian Studies, and then to find my calling and be able to carve out that pathway in American Indian Studies. I wouldn't have been able to do it anywhere else, although I was pretty closely attached to the College of Education in Language, Reading, and Culture with my mentor also, Dr. Teresa McCarty. It wouldn't have happened in this way if it weren't for American Indian Studies. So I have to say that just like the contributors mentioned that, I felt like I had a rightful space at the American Indian Studies fireplace, and we were all there, and this is where we were nurtured and cultivated for sure. I mean, it was a chosen pathway that was finally there for us, and It was the best pathway for me at the time, for sure. I'm also so fortunate and privileged to have worked with what the contributors called or referred to as the greatest scholars, Indigenous scholars, and the dream team of our faculty. To know that Vine Deloria's in my past, Mary Jo, and I'm kind of at a loss for all the people that were there because they were like family to me. And they all wanted us to do well. I think I really appreciated that comment from the stories. And everything here was all based in respect, relevancy, responsibility, and reciprocity to the hilt as well. So for me, reading through the stories of the contributors, they were telling my story as well. So I'm really glad that I was able to read their stories, and we have a shared language of experience through all the trials and tribulations all of us went through, but also the successes and how we are, sort of a beacon for other Indigenous peoples coming behind us. And we definitely have validated, legitimized, privileged our experiences of trauma, but also resiliency and persistence that is now accessible to the wider scholarship and field. And that fact that despite all of the colonization generations of process of that we still have, I always think about what Vine Deloria said, that we come to the academy as Indian people and we still emerge as Indian people. And so we have an Indigenous embodied knowledge that has earned a respectful place in education in the academy that these contributors to the book have done. So I congratulate all of you for the successes that you have accomplished. I congratulate the editors for bringing our stories to the surface. And I just have heartfelt thanks for this space that allowed me to pursue my own visions and also to work on behalf of my community and what I do now. I can't thank you enough. Asquari.
Right, Kestrel.
Thank you, Dr. Nicholas. We really appreciate your words, and we really appreciate your persistence and your willingness to write that forward for the book, because I think you do a really beautiful job tying it all together right there at the beginning, and your words did the same for us here today. So good evening, everybody. My name is Kestrel Smith. I am the chair for the American Indian Indigenous Studies program at Wenatchee Valley College in Omak, Washington. And as has been mentioned earlier, I got both my master's and my PhD from the American Indian Studies program at the University of Arizona. Dr. Fox is also my mentor during both of those degrees. Her support was integral to what I did while I was at the University of Arizona, as well as what I continue to do here in Washington State, building and teaching the first and only full American Indian Indigenous Studies program at a community college in the state of Washington, which is hard to believe, considering that we have over 30 community and technical colleges in the state of Washington. But that is something that we are working to change here. We've created a statewide consortium of the community technical college in the state in collaboration with the tribes and the universities in the state to build courses and to build programs that reflect many of the things that our contributors talked about learning and engaging with in the classroom and even outside of the classroom in the book that we're all here to celebrate today. What I'm hearing tonight is that there's this theme of this work being personal. This book is personal, the work is personal on a variety of levels. And I think it's a really beautiful thing that we can all come together and share that with each other today. So in line with the idea of themes, what I'm going to be doing this evening is first introducing the contributors that are going to be sharing their stories here tonight with regard to the different themes that Dr. Blair mentioned earlier. And so just a little bit of information about how we came to finding and dividing the book into these themes. Again, they were family and kinship, mentorship, and service and giving. When we first got the chapters from the contributors, Dr. Fox, Dr. Blair, and I all took the chapters on our own. We read through them. We worked individually to identify a variety of different themes that were found in each of the chapters. And then once we all got through the chapters as a whole, we came together to discuss and compare our individual lists of the themes throughout each of the chapters. And we worked to try to identify major overarching themes that work to connect several of the chapters together. We recognize that there's a lot of overlap in shared stories and shared experiences in these chapters. And so breaking the book into these themes in no way, shape, or form is meant to silo these stories, because that interconnectedness is inherent in the book and in the stories and the Indigenous experience in higher education. But the way that we want to approach it tonight is going down as if we're going through the table of contents in the book. We'll start with family and kinship, then we'll move to mentorship, then we'll wrap up the contributors sharing their thoughts tonight on service and giving. So tonight we are very privileged to have Dr. Elise Ali Joseph, Dr. Georgina Bodoni, Dr. Aresta Sosi Paddock, Dr. Michael Lerma, Dr. Michelle Hale, and Dr. Gregory Redhouse with us today. So we will spend about 5 minutes or so with each of the contributors, who will take their time to share their personal stories with each of you. So Dr. Elise Ali Joseph, would you please start us off for the evening?
I sure will. And dang, it felt really good to be in this space with all these amazing Indigenous doctors. I think sometimes I forget about sharing a space and the work that we all did, and the years and the tears and the love and the sweat and the blood that we put into. And then you hear doctor, 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 doctor. And it's like, I got chills hearing that. So thanks, Kestrel. Halito Chimachukma Saho Chifoya Elise Ali Joseph Chatasia. So hello, it's good to be in this space with everyone. My name is Elise Ali Joseph. I'm a citizen of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. I graduated with my master's in 2007, and then I loved this program so very much that I continued on with my doctorate and graduated in 2013. I currently am an assistant professor at Northern Arizona University in the Applied Indigenous Studies Department. And I also serve as the faculty athletic representative. So I'm about 30% in the president's office, where I work with athletics, and then 70 in AIS. And I just want to again say a huge yakoke to all the contributors to share this space with you, not only here on Zoom, but in the book. And I just want to honor to all of our fellow classmates that came before us and are going to come after us for the stories that they also share that didn't make this book, because I know they're profound and important as well. And then a huge thank you to Mark Kestrel, and of course Mary Jo, who, like all of us, we just love you, and a huge mentor and provider. I like to say my academic auntie over here. So thank you for everything. I feel like while I was at U of A, not only Mary Jo, but the other faculty members were not only your mentors, but also your friends. And I think that was very important because I think for Indigenous students, sometimes we don't need necessarily we do. We need someone who's going to teach us and show us academically, scholarly, how to be better, but we also need a friend. And I'm seeing that within my students at Northern Arizona University. And so I feel like initially, when I first stepped on campus, I felt like I had friends as faculty. And I think that's very unique and different from a lot of places, and even a lot of American Indian or Native American studies departments. And also, what I tell my students today is I say, as an Indigenous woman in academia, historically, maybe I'm not supposed to be here. Like, this space was not really built for me, but I'm here. And so I pledge to use my access to help create your entry. And I learned that from you all at University of Arizona. I learned how to walk in your path and how to use your guidance and your love to create a space of welcoming and to create a space of creativity and a space to move forward. So again, thank you. Thank you for that. So, you know, I shared a lot in my story, but the thing that I really want to touch on is what I learned at U of A in the classroom and in my experiences. You know, I'm doing now. I am the work that I learned there, I'm providing and giving back to community now. And I was sitting in Mary Jo's higher education class, and one of my students was giving a lecture on Native American student athletes. And I saw my statistic up there. I played tennis at UC Davis, and I saw myself. There was only 3 Native collegiate players during that year. And I said, oh my gosh, that's me. I see myself, and it was enlightening. It was kind of cool. But then when I really thought about it, I said, that's very sad. That's very disheartening. And so from that moment on, I pledged to use that space, my experience and my future education to create more spaces of entry for not only Native students, but Native student athletes. And this past weekend, I was at the Women's Final Four, doing a whole lot of programming around Indigenous athletes and advancement in education. And I travel to universities and I talk about how do you recruit and you retain Native student athletes? How do you connect with community and create programming and awareness around the importance of not only student athletes, but students. So no, I really want to say that's, aside from the love and the nurturing, the education that I was awarded and provided is just something that I could never say enough about. So thank you so much. And one last thing I'd be remiss if I didn't share is, you know, in my chapter, I talk about my struggle with alcoholism, and how I'm going to get emotional about how, you know, I talked with multiple of my professors about what should I do? Like, I think I need to go somewhere and get help. And each one of them said, Elise, you come first, right? You come first. Education will be here when you come back. Go get healthy. And that's what I did. And I came back and I graduated. And I wasn't going to share that in my chapter, but I thought that would be so selfish of me if I didn't share that experience for other people that might be experiencing something like that. So again, sorry, I didn't know I was going to get emotional, y'all, but this is how much I love this place. Thank you so much for creating this space for us, all of you. And I look forward to creating more spaces together and hopefully seeing the amazing work and impact and service that this book can provide to our future generations coming up. So yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ali Joseph, for your words here today and for everything that you shared in your chapter. I think it's very raw and humbling chapter and experience that you've shared with everybody here today and in your contribution. So thank you. I also want to pause and apologize that we also have Dr. Teresa Spoonhunter here. There was a little bit of a confusion with the name that Zoom gives you. So I apologize, Dr. Spoonhunter. We have you on the list to share today. So thank you for letting us know. Okay, going along the line of the family and kinship theme, we have Dr. Georgina Bedoni next. Dr. Bedoni.
Hello, Yate. She Georgina Bedoni Yanishia, not ordinate Fachi Yanishna. Kintichini Bashichin, Bipitoni the Shiche, Kinya Ani the Shinale. Yeah, thank you for everyone joining us and this opportunity to tell our stories. And it really does feel like a reunion tonight. Seeing everyone's faces, it just brings me back to U of A. And I graduated in 2017, and like I think many people on this call, Dr. Fox was also my mentor, my dissertation chair, and was kind of like an academic mom, and also a role model. And I think that's how I grew so close to the program was being able to identify with someone who not only resembled me, but also who had a similar background. When I had applied to the program, I had a 2-year-old, and one of the questions was, how am I going to do this? Is this possible to have a child and complete this program? Oh, sorry, I'm already thinking about it. This chapter was really emotional for me, because like Mark had said, Dr. Blair had said, is it's been ongoing since 2017 for 7 years, and having to revisit my story was heartbreaking at times, and my story is really based in my own personal struggles, not only growing up, as a Bene kid, as a Navajo kid, and having grown up in the public school systems that is always doubting your intellectual abilities, your academic abilities, not always feeling like enough. And those challenges is what I spoke about, but then also kind of those challenges kind of continued throughout graduate school. But AIS, had support systems, resources, and it really made graduating from the program possible. And in my story, my second year, I was pregnant with my second son, and I remember thinking, like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to do this? Not only do I have a little one who's 3 years old, but now I'm going to have another one. Like, is this possible? And my parents, my parents took early retirement to help us take care of our boys. So they lived with us, and they took care of both of my boys while I was away in school. And the introduction of my chapter was about how I would get up early in the morning, like at 2 o'clock in the morning, and read. My little one would be laying next to me, and I'm trying to highlight themes and going through my classes, and those were the struggles that really stood out. And also, my mom got sick during that time, and my mom passed away a couple years ago, almost 2 years ago this month. So it was always just this very emotional story for me, and I really struggled finishing it. I really struggled revisiting it, editing it, going back. I remember, like, I would get an email from Kestrel, I'd be like, oh, I don't want to read it again. I don't want to read it again. But then I thought, like, other students are going to have these struggles, and this is real. And I think the lack of motherhood in academia is a story that isn't really shared. So I wanted to make sure that I shared that in my contributions. Is that the lack of representation and that lack of voice and those experiences. And I wanted to make sure that I stressed that it is possible with children and heartbreak and illness. But it really is the support that I received from AIS that helped me get through the program, but also helped me get through those times. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Padoni, for your words and your work and your persistence. I remember watching you go through those years with your pregnancy belly and thinking that you were just superwoman, and how much I admired you during that time. So thank you for your words. All right, our third and final contributor for the family and kinship theme is Dr. Aresta Sosa Paddock. Aresta.
Yaat A, Shaya, Nakaidana, what had lean in the shle, be between the Bush's chin, is a slana dash a che, Ado Kiana a dashanala, Ado Arresta Sosi Paddock a dashajina. My name is Arresta Sosi Paddock, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Arizona. My home department is American Indian Studies, and I also have a joint appointment with the Department of Linguistics. And gosh, this was a hard article to write because there was a lot of thought, and what do I put into it, and what do I want my readers to know about me, about myself. And I think, like Georgina, I went through a lot of struggles as well, but also knowing the consistency of the people that were at the university for support and providing resources. And especially, I just want to thank Dr. Mary Jo Tippeconnic Fox for being our North Star, and for always being there and giving us that strength. And I'm very honored to call her my mentor, my sister, my friend. Thank you. And one thing I did not share in my book is when I began the program, my middle son passed away. And I think, I kept going back and forth. Do I continue the program, or do I, what does this mean? And how do I handle this? And I think just, I think I probably went through a couple of years feeling numb about it. But I think back about him and his spirit and his strength. And what he would tell me is to continue on. And so that brought quite a bit of, energy and the persistency to continue on. And not only, at the present generation, the present part of my life, but also from the past. And having that knowledge that my paternal grandfather was born coming back from the long walk, and thinking about the struggles that they had to go through to persist and to be resilient, and how that also brought strength to my journey in the academic field. But also, I was not, sometimes I think, like what Elise or Georgina and Elise, I'm not supposed to be here. Sometimes I get that feeling, but you just have to kind of push that aside. But the reality is that you are here and you are doing academic work. And so, and also the preparation, I think in the book, one of the highlights that I wanted to bring about was the preparation when I was getting my master's at Arizona State University. I had a mentor there as well, and my interest was on the topic of relocation. So basically my work and my interest intersects with land and language, and being a product of forced relocation. I really wanted to have a home to go back to. And as a relocatee, sometimes you would have other colleagues or acquaintances say, well, I'm going to go home. When are you going home? And you just kind of pause and think, well, I don't have a home to go back to because we were relocated. And having experienced that as a young as a young person, as a young child, and having that continue on. That was one of my emphasis, was to help those who are landless as a result of forced relocation. And I guess that's a community work of mine, but also in academic work, but also intersecting that, having grown up being, with Navajo being my first language, and having to interpret for my parents as really young. I just kind of, I guess the language found me in academics, and it is really important to maintain and continue that work. But I think I pretty much shared what I wanted to share, something that I did not have in the book, but also the intersection of my work, and also the past and, of my life and what has driven me. And also, I think one thing I don't really share is when I say I'm not supposed to be here, I think I go back to not having completed high school. And there were many contributing factors that led up to that, but that did not stop me from continuing on my journey with education. And I think a large part of that is, just being able to provide for family, but also it just, when you have one, when you're able to get into an institution, you kind of continue on that road. And so yes, so here I am. So I just want to say thank you for letting me share my words, and also to be colleagues with some very wonderful, esteemed individuals out there. So yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Sosa Paddock. We really appreciate you being here with us tonight. Okay, so we are going to move on to the theme of mentorship. So Dr. Mike Lerma, will you start us off with this theme for tonight?
All righty. What an honor to write along you all. It's just awesome. But I heard a rumor that Lizzie and Michelle are beamed in. My daughters from Flagstaff, love you too. Say hi to Nanny and Mikey. Adrian, love you. I heard you're beamed in too. I see you on the screen here, so I got to give my shout outs like I'm doing a mixtape. And to Bahi and to Alex and to Cameron. Did anybody keep track? That's 7 kids. I'm gonna start my own clan over here, guys. But yeah, I have a few points that I want to make, so I had to make a little list so that I would stay on track and I wouldn't forget stuff. So honestly, I can't remember what I wrote and what I kept out, and there were a couple of drafts where I would rewrite a story and then I'd finish the read and I'd realize that I'd written it 2 pages later. So yeah, it's been 7 years and of getting this chapter out there, and it's I'm so thankful that I got my copy, and I'm gonna find all you guys and I'm gonna have you sign this, and we're gonna keep this in a vault. So watch out for me. To the authors, that is. A shout out to my classmates, Elise, Teresa. I took my wife Adrian to Little Abner's in, I think it was, I don't remember anymore. So I don't know if you remember that steakhouse, hanging out with Mrs. Deloria once upon a time. Such great memories. But also a shout out to my colleague Greg. If I could work with all of you at some institution, I'd do it. Every time I find out about a job opportunity, I reach out to somebody, and I say, please apply, if I think you're in a situation where that might work out. So thank you, Greg, for collaborating with me here at the Net College. I'll start off by just saying that, you know, my life, I think, started off in mourning. I lost my dad in 1982. I lost my grandfather in 84. And then I became the man of the house. And I'm 8 years old. And I'm like, what the hell am I going to do? And I just kind of went into this space, you know, all through my teenage years. And I remember distinctly when my grandmother passed on, and that was 1992, I was 16 years old. And I saw my cousin Mike just speaking about my grandmother with such loving terms. And I made up my mind that day that I'm not going to shut up anymore. I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna get back, and I'm gonna try to change the world. And so that's what I'm up to. If anybody's wondering, I'm trying like crazy. And so I decided to take the reins of my life, and I decided to do things that I knew they were impossible, and yet somehow they became possible. A lot of that thanks goes to Tom Holm, goes to Chief Justice Robert Yazzie, goes to Manly Begay, Ben Columbi, Francie Washburn. These are all the mentors that were, I guess, legally obligated through contract to read my dissertation. So not to take away from other mentees or mentors that I had here, Mary Jo certainly included. And I tell you, when I graduated and I walked back in, gosh, what was that? 2010, 2011, 2011. I walked across the stage. My mom was there. My aunt was there. My cousins were there. I had 3 cousins there. And I think there were more Lerma / Morales in house than anybody else. So I'm still waiting for my door prize on that one, guys. So just mail it out whenever. But my mom, you should have seen how shocked she was when she saw that my professors, she told me this in no disparaging terms, but just the way that we imagine the academy. She pulled me aside and she said to me, "They're not white, they're Indians." And I was like, yeah, you know, I'm being guided by the best, and I can't let them down. You know, I gotta keep going. I gotta keep fighting, and I gotta be the best. Just like everybody, I think, has that attitude. Like we can't let our relatives down, because there's a lot. And like I said, I accepted that back in '92. And so I'm just thankful that I'm still able to do something like that. And just on the topic of being out of place in the academy, as an undergrad, I attended UCLA. I went there as a transfer student from 1998 to 2000. Before I had any clue about what I was stepping into, it made me sick, because it turns out there are human remains of our relatives, California natives, in those basements. And it made me sick. The things that, you know, nobody could tell me about. And I had no way of dealing with it until I got to the Navajo Nation, and medicine people took care of me, and they got that off me too. And so it's just so, you know, the things that we learned the hard way that we don't want our kids to go through. That's really why we do it too, you know. And so I say that to my kids, all of them, if you're listening, you know, just, I'm doing my best, because I don't want you to have to go through what I went through. I don't want you to have to throw yourself through the glass of the academy in order to just sit and learn. I just want you to sit in and learn, and not have to worry about that stuff. And I think everybody shares that as we go along. But I think, you know, the last point I'll make is the reason that we're still here, the reason that we made it this far, is that it was our ancestors that still protect us, guide us. They kind of ring in our ear, or they tingle at us, or they come to us in some form and they nudge us left, they nudge us right. And they nudged me to the University of Arizona too. I also applied to UC Davis, and all of my letters of rec never made it. And I had no choice in some ways but to go to U of A. But thank God, thank Creator, thank the Yin, whatever you want to call it, that happened to me. And at some point, we will be on that other side in a different world, and we'll be guiding our descendants from that world in this current world now. And we'll have to have the ability to kind of nudge them along. And so that's my long and short of it all. And that's really why the title of my chapter is Who's Watching the Boy? The Creator's watching the boy. At the end of the day, I'm still Mikey. I'm still that little boy that needs a little nudge here and there. I'm not perfect. And but you know, I can't believe that we got this book out. I'm thankful to everybody at U of A Press, Kristen. I think, Mark, I bugged you the most about it. I would nag you every 18 months with an email, like, what the hell, let's get this going. And, you know, so thank you to everybody. Again, I'm honored to be in your wonderful company. And I'll leave it at that. Yeah. And we'll see you at the next party.
Thank you, Dr. Lerma. I really appreciate the way you started your talk today with the shout outs. That was really, really wonderful. Okay, so Dr. Teresa Spoonhunter, you are our other contributor under the mentorship theme tonight. There we go. Can you hear me, Dr. Spoonhunter?
Yeah, I can hear you, but it says I can't start my video either.
Oh, that's okay. We can hear you though. We can hear you.
Okay. So dos nanana niehi bikina hise oki ni tani kunato sixtakiaki. So, you know, this book's been, you know, I guess kind of really a reflection of, where I grew up. I grew up, on the Blackfeet Indian Reservation. So of course, going all the way to Arizona was, quite the trek. And, I share the same stories of having children in grad school, which to this day, I always tell people, no, don't do it. I felt like I took the scenic route, getting through my program because I had my children, and I kind of stepped back a bit and start working full time. And I realized, it's coming upon, my 10 years. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to finish. And so I convinced my mom to come stay there. And I basically lived at the library to write my dissertation. And, was very fortunate that, she came and stayed with me and helped me with my 3 children, because I was a single parent. But for me, it wasn't, being in Arizona, it became home. My 2 of my youngest were born there. And one of the reasons why I chose the University of Arizona was because, regardless if there was people at the university, I knew there was at least, 20 plus tribes in Arizona. And growing up on the reservation, that was really something that I valued, was having those relationships. And my father, always preached that no matter where you go and live, you have to learn their culture, you have to learn their history. And so I was blessed to have, really adopted into, the TO tribe. One of my good friends, kind of took me in, and, sharing, our background too. I grew up in an alcoholic home. And I always kind of used education as a way for me to keep moving forward, that even though, there were semesters maybe I felt like I didn't do so well, I knew just showing up to class, was enough for me to feel like I was still moving when I felt like I couldn't move forward. And so I remember one semester I didn't do so well, and I was talking with my aunt, and I was like, well, I didn't do as well as I did. And she said, well, you know what? She's like, you passed, be happy, be grateful. She said, after everything you're going through right now, that's success. And so, I really had, a good support system, with my family. And, they always said, you can always come home, but go out and see the world and, make the best of it. And so, Tucson kind of became my home. U of A, I really tried to tailor, we were interdisciplinary at the time, and, what was I interested in, and how could I make that work? And, and there were times, I pushed those boundaries, for American Indian Studies. And I said, you know what? We need a tribal colleges class. And so I convinced Dr. Martin, who was working on accrediting TO, the Tohono O'odham Community College, to come and teach this class. So he drive, be at TO, from probably, 6 in the morning till 5 at night, and then would come teach us from 7 to 9. And half the time, I swear he was half asleep teaching us about tribal colleges. But for me, that was really important because, tribal colleges are really a good foundation for students, and students that graduate from tribal colleges were a lot more successful. And, I was fortunate to, attend a tribal college and then, work with tribal colleges as I was in graduate school. And so it was really important to me. And then, another direction that I really pushed, my program was, tribes deal probably 75% of the issues they deal with is natural resources. And so after Mary Jo, Joe Hiller came in temporary, and I was like, well, you are interim director. We need, a natural resource program in American Indian Studies. And so him and Dr. Columby, got together and start creating this course. Unfortunately, it wasn't done by the time I graduated, but, it was able to really kind of, make influence, because sometimes academia is far removed from tribal issues. And being in an urban setting, sometimes we're not connected to those. And so I was very grateful that, American Indian Studies allowed us to be interdisciplinary, allowed us to take, courses that we were interested in that would help us later in our career. And, despite, hardships and, like I said, the scenic route, I was really, fortunate for the mentorship for the instructors that really allowed me to kind of build a, get a foundation in coursework that would keep me interested. I also got to work with Native Nations Institute, and, and that was really important to me. And surprisingly, when I did finally graduate, I remember my daughter, maybe she was, 7, 8 years old, and she was listening, and, they said, okay, here's times for question. And she asked me a question, and I swear hers was the hardest to answer. Not my committee, but my daughter, my little 6, 7-year-old daughter, because she was thinking, from a tribal worldview and a, futuristic worldview. And so, having that support and that belief. And there was a time that, because like I said, I was pushing my deadline, and Dr. Clumby was on sabbatical, and I was writing, ferociously. I was writing, and the grad deadline said, you have to be done by this date. And it didn't happen. And I was like, and they said, well, you're gonna have to come back next year. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired, I'm exhausted, and I'm so close. And so I called Dr. Columby, and he said, keep writing. I won't be back for 3 weeks. Do you think you will be done in 3 weeks? And I said, yes, I will. And so he went, above and beyond and, pushed those institutional deadlines and made it possible for me to graduate. And so I'm really grateful, that, he was able to, really support me and, guide me and help me get to the finish line. And I think about, the career that I have. I'm at a community college right now. And the reason why I chose this one was so I could work directly with tribes. But it just so happens it's my dad's tribe. And we're a border town there. And it's interesting because I never grew up here on the Wind River Reservation, the Northern Arapaho people. And even though I didn't grow up here, when I came here, they said, well, you got your PhD. Now, so there are more eyes on me, but we're grateful that you came home. Even though, like for me, like I said, I didn't grow up here. And so, as a student, even though we're the ones that do the blood, sweat, and tears, go through the hardships of being a grad student, our people always have eyes on us. And they look to how we're going to use our degree to help our people. And so I feel that, U of A really allowed me to be the foundation, to be the best service, to my community and have enough tools, to be innovative, here for not only my community college, but, the tribes here on the Wind River Reservation. Ho-ho.
Thank you, Dr. Spoonhunter, for your words and for being here with us tonight. And for wrapping up our mentorship theme. We have 2 more contributors who are going to share under the service and giving back theme for the book. So Dr. Michelle Hale, will you start us off tonight?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Michelle Hale. I'm Navajo, Laguna, Chippewa, and Odawa. I'm an assistant professor here at Arizona State University Tempe campus. And so honored, so humbled to be here tonight. And it's so nice to see some familiar faces. I was just thinking to myself that I can't believe I've known Sheila and Mary Jo and Greg Redhouse since the 1990s. It's certainly been a long time. But I wanted to start by saying a little bit about the title for the piece that I wrote, which is Keep Plugging, New Generations Need Strong Shoulders to Stand On. And the idea here in terms of keep plugging is that was, those were the words of encouragement that I would always get from my mom. And like Teresa, I took the scenic route with my PhD program. I actually, before I was finished with my dissertation, I had already started teaching here at Arizona State University and had been doing so for a couple of years before I really kind of hunkered down to finish my dissertation. But my mom was stalwart in terms of encouraging me and really believing that I would loop back and finally finish that dissertation in the PhD program. The other part of the title of my essay, New Generations Need Strong Shoulders to Stand On, I think really resonates with my role here as faculty, as a mentor to many Indigenous students, because we are very blessed and fortunate to have dozens and dozens of Native students in American Indian Studies here, but also just across campus, because we have over 2,000 Native students here at ASU. Not all of them are AIS majors and minors, but they're out there and they take our AIS classes either as electives or a good number of them are minors. So I think we serve a lot of the other degree programs quite well in terms of providing education and some really kind of youth-inspired work here in American Indian Studies, which I think is really important because there are so many of our students who are passionate about issues that are important to their Indigenous communities. They are really gung-ho to come here, get their education, and to go home and give back. That's something that honestly has remained unchanged since I first started teaching as a graduate student at U of A. Back in the 90s, that was a pervasive attitude and spirit among the students, and that is still evident in a lot of our young people. And so I think it's, of course, really positive and really inspiring because they are determined to go home and do something to affect positive change. So my role here is to do everything that I can to equip them for that through teaching the knowledge that they gain from our classes. A lot of it is through mentoring. I do coordination for our AIS internship program. So, have a partnership with local nonprofits, places like Phoenix Indian Center, Native American Connections, Native Health, Herd Museum. And all of that is really meant to try to connect students, help them to build their networks, but also to hopefully give them a leg up as they work on their education here at ASU, but also begin to think about careers and start to build those networks so they can be successful once they get out in the world. I think in my role as faculty, it's also still really important that our Indigenous students are able to see themselves in the faculty. That's something that I write about in my chapter, is being really powerful about being a student in AIS at the University of Arizona, in particularly with Lucy Tapahanto being a fellow Diné woman, and just really being inspired by her work. And, Lucy being a home girl, somebody from home who I could really identify with something that was very powerful in terms of that experience. And I write about Mary Jo being my academic mom. We've heard that one several times tonight, and absolutely rings true. I think in terms of the patience and undying support that she offered over all the years. And it's heartwarming even today, all these years later, to see Mary Jo at Western Social Science Association conference in other places. Just the number of students that she's had a positive effect or influence on over the years is amazing. And I think from Mary Jo and other faculty at the University of Arizona, I was able to kind of learn what it takes to be a good mentor. And certainly with the wheels of time turning, my role now as a mentor, I think, has been informed by that experience at the U of A, and something that, I continue to try to uphold in terms of the way that I work with students here, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous. We have a lot of non-Native allies who are really interested in working on community issues. So the last thing I want to mention is someone earlier said that the U of A AIS program shows us the importance of community. And that's something that I too have continued to place value on in terms of making sure that my work is something that's beneficial for my home community. In fact, the book that I'm working on right now with U of A Press, actually, Kristen Buckles, is a book on Navajo community development. And it's something that I'm really hoping, of course, is of interest to the academic community, but for me, most important, especially with some of the issues that we're working on back home at Navajo, I'm hoping that it has some usefulness in terms of people back home talking about community development, and certainly talking about community-based planning initiatives. So again, that's something I see with our students. People want to do that community-based work, and I think American Indian Studies is a wonderful home for that. We here at ASU are still actively building an AIS program. We do not yet have a PhD program, but certainly a lot of the lessons, things that I observed in watching particularly Jay Stouse and Mary Jo fight to keep this space for AIS at U of A is something that we certainly, I learned from that, and that's something that we continue to work on here at ASU. So finally, I know we're running out of time here. I just want to say that I'm here with a lot of gratitude. Thank you, Mary Jo. Thank you to all of the faculty over the years who have been outstanding role models and support systems for all of us. So, so proud of everybody, all the contributors, the team that worked on this book, and really happy to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hale, for everything you shared with us tonight. And we're really, really glad that you were able to be a part of this book with us. So thank you. Okie dokie. Dr. Greg Redhouse, will you please wrap us up for the evening under the theme of service and giving back?
Yate. So I just want to point out to Michelle, yeah, the 90s were good to us, right? So the good times. I was just kind of thinking back, and it's kind of interesting rolling back this way to Diné College. A lot of my colleagues I run across, and we kind of reminisce back when I was teaching here the first 10 years from about 97 up to 2007. And, and then I took a leave of absence. I headed back to school, and then kind of rolling back, I noticed a lot of my students approach me, and they think I'm like in my 30s or 40s, and I tell them, no, I'm an old man. I'm 50. I'm turning 50 this year. And they kind of like look at me like, really? Yeah, you're the youngest old man I've ever seen. I said, well, I guess that's a good thing. I'll go ahead and take that as a compliment. But I just want to say thank you to everybody who's been part of the journey. And, I think just about everybody on the screen has been a part of my life. And my mind, I kept looking at this, and I was reminded of when my mom used to watch Hollywood Squares, and the Brady Bunch that I grew up with, and those little squares that pop up. And I was just looking left and right, and thinking about the journey I went through. I think for me, a lot of what I went through had to deal with, how to respond in a positive way. But a lot of that really went back to this idea of a firm foundation. And I realized that, my parents did provide me with a firm foundation, and that had to deal with Navajo teachings, culture, values, ethics. And that's what I was grounded in as a kid. And so taking that, I ran with that, but it never stopped. I met people along the way that provided and added more to my repertoire. In my section, I talk about archery, the sport of archery. And I mentioned my coach and the words he expressed and instilled in me, not just me, but all the other student athletes that were inspired. And he still works here. But there was a time where he recruited me and asked me to be the archery coach. And so I stepped in his shoes, and for about a decade, I was helping him. And I stepped away from that in 2007 to go back to school. But there was always that passion inside me, deep inside. I missed doing archery. And by, I think it was in 2013, in December 2013, my kids, they saw my bow case, and they were looking at it, and they said, "Chizé, do you still use this?" And I told them, yeah, I still use it. I know how to use it. And my kids, it was kind of just collecting dust. So I opened it up, and my kids were just looking at it. They were just amazed how colorful it was. It took them by surprise. And they asked, show us how to do it. I'm like, okay. So I said, let's go to the archery range. And we went down Grant Road, just off the I-10. There's precision shooting equipment. They make bows there. And I went over there and sighted in real quick. And once I got my mark, I kind of amazed myself. And I said, I haven't even touched this equipment for about almost 7 years. And now I finally broke it out again. And this was in December 2013, just before 2014. And I told my kids, I said, you know what? There's a tournament tomorrow up in Phoenix. Let's go. So we zipped up there and we stayed at one of my cousin's sister's house. And the next morning she woke us up at 5. And she goes, what time do you have to be at the tournament? And I said, by 7. She goes, well, I got breakfast ready, so you better wake up your kids. And we got all ready. They got fed. Then I loaded them up in the truck, and then we zipped on over to Papago Park up in Scottsdale. And we got there, and I shot the whole day. And what was convenient was my kids got to play with the other kids. They were all playing in the background, and I was shooting all day. And at the close of the tournament, it was around 3 o'clock. I was putting my gear away. And as I was putting my gear away, my kids ran up to me. They said, Shazah, they're calling your name. And I'm like, what? And I walked over to see what was going on. And yeah, they called my name. And, I took 5th place. I got the bronze medal. And, I kind of really surprised myself and thought, yeah, I haven't lost my touch, man. I still know how to handle this equipment. And I was pretty confident right there, boy. I really needed that boost of, I was highly motivated. I said, I can still do some things that, even though I kind of put it aside. Rolling back this way to Diné College, I think for me it was, just looking for a space where I would find myself and be comfortable again with my kids. And my kids were ecstatic to come back home, and so we're in the process of rebuilding the farm and renovating the house. So we do what we can when we can, but it's a busy lifestyle up here. I think it's better that way, just being proactive and productive. And lo and behold, just a couple of weeks ago, as I was thinking about, how the sport of archery impacted my life and the culture and the people that impacted me, it all came together. And finally, even with the support of Dr. Lerma, he said, go for it. So I went ahead and pursued the archery coach position, and I got reinstated. And after a 14-year hiatus, it's like, hey, yeah, it feels good to put that coach jacket back on and get out there and start working with student athletes again. And it brought back a lot of good memories. People started coming around. And so I even got a job offer this morning from the East Coast. There was a guy trying to recruit me for an archery coach position. I was like, I'm situated. I'm good where I'm at, but thank you. I'll go ahead and pass the word on to other people. But, I was really surprised. And I asked him, I said, how did you locate me? And he goes, I just got on the internet and searched. I looked for colleges and universities that do archery. And he goes, Diné College popped up. And then I went on that site and your name was there. And so that's why I'm reaching out to you. So, it felt good. And so, well, we're in the process of promoting archery again here at Diné College. So even this summer, we're allowing our Native American Studies program, our minor program to grow. We already have Navajo Indian Studies, but we also have Native American Studies, and it's a little bit broader. And so, we have an opportunity to allow the course descriptions to grow and to offer different types of courses. Right now, I'm taking care of a course dealing with colonization and ethnopolitics. And so I'm having fun with that. And I get to do Native American Studies introduction course later this fall. I'm going to utilize what I also taught back at U of A, Native American warfare, talking about, limited, limited, how would I say this? Sometimes when we go on a reservation, we have limited resources, and we're always competing for that. And so that's how that course, played out. We do talk about warfare, but it all comes down to economics and how we compete for particular resources. And so I'm looking at, teaching that course this fall. Other things, this summer we're going to do Native American archery. So even in the past, when I was teaching history courses at Pima College, I was teaching all these world civ course and US civ course, but I also came across a lot of information that I added to my lecture to talk about archery and, talk about, how did Alexander the Great utilize archery, in one of the biggest battles where he was outnumbered 5-1, but he used archery to his advantage, and talking about Genghis Khan and how he took over the Asian continent from the Yellow Sea all the way to the Adriatic Sea. So I'm just excited about, having an opportunity to teach archery as well, and under the, and everything that I've acquired, there's a lot that, I just think learning never stops. You can always learn something new. And, there was a time where I had my back up against the wall at U of A, but I realized, even as a veteran, serving in the Marine Corps, there's a lot of testosterone and masculinity out there. But even as a Marine, I had to realize I would see these bumper stickers and these posters say, it takes the heart of a warrior to ask for help. And that reminded me of the Twin Warriors, where they're seeking help to save humanity, and they approach their father, Jonah, the son, and he bestows upon them the bow and the lightning arrows. And so that, a lot of that came back to me in terms of my struggles, what I went through at the U of A, and some of the setbacks. But I always found a way. There was always a way to look at how to overcome. And even that phrase, when I was in the Marine Corps, it was always improvise, adapt, and overcome. And that was the motto. Retreat is not an option. And even with my parents, the way they taught me, there was these phrases, and like, only you can take the initiative. But there was a process to that. It wasn't just a phrase. It was the act of really, putting it together. And so, and part of that, you don't just say that phrase, you act upon it. And that includes knowing those songs, those prayers, knowing how to pray, and making it come to fruition, come to life with those songs and prayers, and follow through with that phrase. I don't think most people realize that. And so sometimes I have to remind even my own students and student athletes, and even with the bow and arrow, I tell them it's sacred. You don't play with it. It's it's something that can be dangerous and sensitive, and you can know how to handle that, because these tools it helped our ancestors to survive. It can take a life, it can save a life. I say it can provide you with food, but you have to know how to handle it. You gotta make sure you have those prayers, those protection prayers and blessing prayers as well. So there's a lot that's all bundled up in it, and then I have to take time to share stuff with my students. But even with my current archery team right now, I'm having to slowly divulge information a little bit at a time, so I don't overwhelm them. There's a lot for them to learn and know. And even my former archery coach, he comes in periodically just to see how things are going, and he's really happy. I think a lot of people are happy to see me back, and I'm glad to be back. So I think I've spoken enough. So I think I'm going to wrap it up and say thank you all for attending and being here. And it's really good to see some familiar faces. I wish I could just hug you all and say, yeah, Rod, it's good to see you guys. High fives here and there. And my kids are here with me. My son Bradley, if you guys remember him, he's as tall as me now. And his little sister caught up with the big sister. And boy, we're enjoying ourselves though. My oldest, she's attending Navajo Preparatory School. My son Bradley just applied, so we're waiting for him to go that way next this coming fall. And so I'm hoping all three go there, because that's my alma mater. I went to school there when it was still called Navajo Mission Academy, but now it's called Navajo Prep. But the campus looks really nice. It looks better than what I went to. Okie dokie. Well, but if anything, I just want to say thank you, Mom. And I'm talking to Mary Jo Fox. Thank you for being there. I appreciate all the help and guidance you provided me. And if you see Miss Washburn, give her a hug for me as well. And I don't know, I was looking for Dr. Home on this. I said, where's that guy? Where's that character? I want to pick on him. He's a jarhead too. So, hey, yeah, that's all I want to share. You guys have a great night. Can I log off now?
No, hang on. Thank you, Greg. I want to thank everyone who attended, who participated. I mean, it reminded me, it was reminiscent of our time at AIS. We laughed a little, we cried a little. You know, we enjoyed each other's company, but most importantly, we were inspired by our contributors and with their joy and the sacrifices they've made and the passion they have for their studies and for the future generations. And as our instructors and our moms, our AIS moms like Mary Jo Fox, Dr. Fox, were trailblazers in AIS and paved the way for us. We will pave the way for the next generations and hopefully make a difference and a change in the world. With that, if Greg is willing, I'm going to ask him to give a short closing prayer, and then we're going to open it up to questions and answers for a few minutes.
Okie dokie. All right. Asa shma yadel kishat ka diene hashtel shewan yalkaisa sanadle. Na yet is ganet kobaj channel says it. Part nesharatne atne no consnet elnet osne nialne anolsko. Diene. Here did net the nitle. Now by the nitle. Now cut the nitle. Bilash like nitle. What an away nitle. I saw the DNA. Nicht kann liet nicht ja what etole. Nicht sie von London nicht sketole. What out needs in DNA. I saw the Nazi the Skango nicht ja what etole. I saw the DNA. Janako nicht ja what etole nicht sie von London. In Napa hier nichts. Nach Alchen hab ahlia. Nicht ran hab ahlia, nicht kean hab ahlia. Aro Olka. Paulka dan lingesto. Betkayarat etole. Betahajon dole sto. Anilso nicht hojon dole. Alchen. Bekatil was Nasi the Skango. Nasi the Skango not only dan lindo le. What out? Nach Alchen panitzen. Was nasty. I just thought about our children, the future. I know some of you have expressed concern for our children. I say, I think we need to at least, say that, in the future, our children will be the leaders, and we got to make sure we're all happy and we're going to be strong, will-minded, think about the future. And I think for a lot of us, that's probably our biggest concern. And it's difficult, 2 weeks ago, I had to give a eulogy for my nephew, and he was only 33 years old and has 5 children he left behind. And so that was difficult that day. And, I think as all of you spoke, I was reminded of those stories. And even my older brother, he passed away in December 2020 during the pandemic that's been going on. So there's a lot that's been happening in my life as well. But, I try to stay focused. And I would point out that, one of the best things that, I had in terms of coming home is Dr. Lerma took the time to have a hatkali. He said, I think we're bringing you home now. So we're going to do this the right way. And so I was really grateful that the college took the time to have a protection ceremony done for me and my kids before I really started to go to work. And so I think, they say you've been off the res, you've been away from home. So we're going to wash off all that negative energy and start you fresh back home. So, I really needed that too. And so, I always look for opportunities to participate and learn some more. And, some of the classes that we have are, you actually have real, songs that are shared by the Hatkatlis, the medicine people. And that's one thing I want to get back into is, when they have those classes again, I want to participate again. My kids were with me too. And they were learning some new songs along with me. I wasn't the only one. My kids were enjoying that. And, we'd have a potluck kind of thing afterwards. So I look forward to those opportunities again once this pandemic is over and the protocols are lifted. That's one thing I look forward to. Yeah. Okay, all righty. I think
We're all looking forward to getting out there again. I know it's getting late. I know a lot of us have kids we need to feed if we haven't yet, but please, if you have any questions, we will take a couple minutes to try and answer them or address any issues you want to bring up. I can see Teresa now too. Hi. If you didn't notice, there is a discount code in the chat from the Arizona Press. You can get 30% off the book if you're looking to purchase it. Otherwise, we'll see if we can get some copies out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I scared them off.
I tell my my undergraduate classes, like, silence isn't necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes you just need to embrace it. But I do know it's getting late. Oh, here's a question. With so many inspiring alumni, what was the process of selecting the authors? Well, I guess I'll tackle that one. What we did is we looked at our alumni list. Luckily, I was working at AIS at the time, so I had access to it. I looked at our alumni list, looked at our Native American graduates from that list, and then basically reached out to all of them. And then we were lucky enough to get enough responses to move forward with the book. I mean, it sounds simple, but that's where it was. We love all our PhD alums, so I think maybe we'll do a second book soon with the rest.
Mark, I was
Yes.
gonna ask. Yeah, you have a lot of your beard turned white. When did that happen? I need to do the same. That
it's funny. I just turned 50 this year too, but I joke around that I lost my hair from my kids and my beard turned gray from AIS, or vice versa. I'm not sure which is which, but that's how I got it.
Hello, Ron, Mr. Trosper, Dr. Trosper, Professor Trosper.
I'm looking at the chat. One of the questions is, was there a time frame? There were PhDs, but they weren't in AIS prior to the first class in 1997. Yes, we did look at that and we acknowledged that as well. But the degree itself didn't start till 1997. So that's why we focused on that year to select individuals to move forward with the book. That was when you could get an AIS degree by itself, a seminal degree. And at the time, the only one out there. I know there's 3, I think. There might be more now. I'm sorry if it's grown and I haven't been paying attention, but there were 3 PhD programs in the country at the time, and or now currently, and we were the first one at U of A. Let's see. Are there any book readings planned at U of A or within the Tucson community? That's a good question. We will work with the Arizona Press and see if we can put something together with the help of the University and American Indian Studies Department. But as of right now, nothing is scheduled. We're getting out of the pandemic and we'll start looking at those kind of things moving forward. And as Marie put in the chat, if you have any suggestions, throw them out there for events or book readings. We're happy to see what we can do.
Yeah, and maybe something in person next time around to bring some of our students in, our alumni in. They're not students anymore, they're colleagues. And but it would be nice to bring them in.
Hey, I'll step up and I'll offer up the college as the next site. So come out to the next college, Shiprock, Salie, Tuba City, whatever branch you want. We'll do it here. They gave me a key to the room.
Mhm. And, you know, to have students in the audience, I think, Native students that, you know, might benefit from these stories and might motivate them to, you know, to further their higher education, because that's what we want to happen. We need more Native students in with degrees at all levels.
I intend to gift this book to many of my students who have found AIS here at Wenatchee Valley College and have or will be transferring into the AIS program at University of Washington. So I'm sure that your stories will all serve as motivation for them as well as they find their way in AIS.
And I encourage you to share, you know, most of you are in academia. Share your stories with your students. You know, most of you are working with students. And, you know, I think that, you know, that will just help them to get a realistic picture of what it takes to earn this degree, but also to show them that, you know, they can do it too. You're models for them.
Sometimes I think when I tell them my story, I don't think they necessarily believe me. So I think I'm going to go ahead and pick on every one of you and invite you as a guest speaker to help out. And so if you don't mind, I'm going to do that and record you too, since you're recording me on this one.
Right. And, you know, and I think that's one of the reasons I invite, you know, some of you to speak to my classes, because I just want to showcase, you know, that the accomplishments of Native women and men and scholars and all of that, because we don't always get to see those in the literature. And so to hear your experiences and to actually see you, I think is inspiring to many of the students that I teach, Native and non-Native.
There's a question in the chat about the requirements for the AIS program. Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with them anymore. I've been over at the law school since 2017, so I'm not sure where we are with the AIS right now, but I'm sure Dr. Fox or Dr. Gilbert would be willing to follow up with you to discuss the requirements of the AIS program.
I don't know if Dr. Gilbert's still on, is he?
No, he's not.
Mm-hmm.
We can send him a message. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just add one last thing here while we still have all the contributors, is that you are all rock stars and superheroes, and I so appreciated getting the chance to work with all of you and read your stories. Some of your stories I knew a little bit about because we went to school together at the same time, but not to the extent of what you shared in your stories. And so I just want to express my gratitude to get to be a part of this with all of you. And that I hope that you see yourself as the rock stars and the superheroes that you are, because you're literally creating the space and the place and the community and the mentorship and the service for your students that you talked about receiving as a student in your stories. So I hope that you see yourselves as the rock stars that I see you as, and just know how much I appreciate getting to be a part of this project with you all.
Yeah, it was, we really appreciated all of your work and all your stories. And we hope, you know, this, because you've made it happen, you know, this book, that was an idea we had, but in order for it to come to a reality, we needed you to tell those stories and be willing to share them. And so we really appreciate that.
I want to close things out by giving a heartfelt thank you to everyone who attended, the contributors, the editors, the Arizona Press, American Indian Studies. It takes a village to make something like this happen. And we're hoping to see more things like this out there in the near future. we do need to wrap things up. We lose the room, so to speak, in a couple minutes. So with that, thanks again for coming. And if you're interested in seeing the recording, we'll work with Arizona Press to make sure it's out there. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Be well.
We'll see you.
See you.